Hello, this is James Lowrie, Admin Assistant for the Canadian League of Composers. I had the chance to sit down with Steven Webb to discuss his new choral work, What Time Is Left, which will be premiered as part of the Pivot premieres at Moonshot 3 this November the 28th, which will be live streamed. I take you now to the interview.
Tell me about your mentor for the program and what you got up to with them.
Yeah, I worked with Andrew Stanland, who I'd met briefly before, and I knew his music quite well. I wanted to work with him because I know that he does incorporate electronics and mixing with live musicians in some of his works, and I wanted to. This was the first time I was doing that with a choir as an ensemble, so I really wanted to sort of get his guidance on that. Um, he was really great with just sort of gentle prompts in directions. Because our scheduling got totally messed up with COVID, I unfortunately only got to sort of meet with him like after the majority of the compositional process was already over, and so it was a lot of tweaking as opposed to if I had met with him earlier. But the tweaks were very, very helpful. And I think that he really helped shape the piece into what it is now. So yeah, he was a great mentor to work with overall.
So tell us, well, me, but us. Tell us about your piece that you wrote for Pivot. What are we going to be hearing?
Yeah, so the overall theme of the Pivot Concerts was, to look at various aspects of our planet and humans and our environment and our interaction with our environment. And I chose a poem entitled Circles by the San Francisco-based poet Ray Armantrout. And I created a piece. The title of the piece is What Time Is Left. And it's simply it's about the climate crisis that we are all aware of and that we're in right now. And it's funny because the pandemic, has warped our sense of time a lot. And I was writing this piece back in 2019, and the at that time, the sort of Fridays for Future marches around the world were really sort of taking over. There were um, demonstrations happening all around the world, and I just wanted to sort of capture some of that energy that we were seeing in protests and activism in 2019. And then the pandemic hit while I was writing it, and it just sort of um, it's the Black Lives Matter protests all sort of hit around a similar time of writing this piece, and the subject matter is still about climate change. It just sort of helped reinforce my desires for the piece as a sort of an upending of the status quo and a sort of a desire for change, as we head into these upcoming decades. So the whole piece is structured around the choir as a sort of a protest mob, I guess you could say. And they do various things you would hear at protests. And the electronics and how they interact with the performers, the electronics sort of play the role of I wanted to play with nostalgia, and sort of I found a bunch of old commercials and like cheery advertisements from earlier on in the 20th century, and how the future is looking so bright and everything's going to be great, and look at this wonderful world we're building, and then sort of contrasting that with some of the poetry from Ray, and playing those two things off of each other. And that's sort of what I was trying to achieve with the piece.
That sounds really cool.
Mhm.
So finally, what are you listening to right now?
Well, I gotta admit that it's not contemporary classical music. I just got off of studying for my comprehensive exams for my doctoral degree, and so I was listening to a ton throughout the summer of all kinds of 20th century composers. So I'm taking a break. I'm listening to Jubilee by Japanese Breakfast
Mm,
right now, which is an album I'd highly recommend, particularly the tracks Be Sweet and Paprika. It's a great album. Every single song's a hit.
yeah, my,
So
uh, my my partner keeps on telling me to listen to that, So I probably should now. I'm getting the recommendations from all.
Yeah, it's one of those rare albums that you put it on and you're like, I've heard these songs before, even though you haven't, and that's how sort of familiar and catchy they are. So yeah, highly
Okay.
recommend it.
Well, awesome. Look forward to hearing your music, and I'm gonna download Japanese Breakfast.
Sounds good.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
Okay.
So that's it for now. Keep your eyes open as I will be interviewing all 6 members of the 2019-20 Pivot cohort leading up to the concert on the 28th.